My phone started ringing before the sky even began to lighten. Not texts. Calls, one after another, stacking up so fast I couldn't answer them all. I listened to the first voicemail while pulling on my boots. "My son's inhaler is on the pharmacy truck," a woman said, her voice shaking. "They're stuck at the bottom of the hill. He needs it this morning." Outside, the wind cut through me like a blade. Snow was already knee-deep, blowing sideways, erasing tire tracks almost as soon as they formed. At the base of the road, a delivery van sat angled awkwardly, hazard lights flashing in the dark like a distress signal. Behind me, my plow truck idled. The engine vibrated under my feet. The blade was mounted, ready. I could have that road clear in 10 minutes. But I wasn't allowed to. Less than an hour earlier, the HOA president, Melissa Harding, had sent me a single ice-cold email. "You are not authorized to modify HOA road conditions. Any action will result in fines and personal liability." No meeting, no warning. Just a ban, dropped in the middle of the worst storm of the season. My phone rang again. This time it was county dispatch. "There's an ambulance staged near the main road," the operator said. "If we get a call up there and that road isn't clear, response time doubles." I stood there staring at the buried pavement, snow piling higher by the minute, listening to my truck idle uselessly behind me. That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't about snow anymore. This wasn't about rules. Someone had turned safety into a legal power play, and people's lives were now on a clock. If you want to hear more true stories like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button to HOA Update. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I moved to Pine Hollow nearly 10 years ago, back when it was still a place where people trusted each other more than paperwork. It sat high in the mountains, carved into steep land where winter wasn't a season. It was a condition you lived under. Long gravel roads twisted through pine trees, and once snow started falling, you either stayed ahead of it or you stayed trapped. There was no middle ground. I ran a small snow removal business then. One truck, one plow. Long nights and early mornings. I handled my own driveway and the stretch of road in front of my house without thinking twice. That was just part of living up here. The first winter, a neighbor knocked on my door before dawn. "Any chance you could hit the bend by my place?" he asked. "My wife can't get out." I did. The next storm, another neighbor asked, then another. Soon I was clearing the steepest sections before sunrise, not because anyone paid me, but because if you waited until later, the snow packed into ice and nobody moved, especially not school buses. For years, it worked, quietly, reliably. Parents waved as they passed me in the mornings. Teachers made it to school on time. Emergency vehicles never had trouble getting up the hill. No one needed to talk about it. It just happened. The HOA didn't exist yet. When it finally formed, it came with all the usual promises: professional management, consistency, coordination with the county. I wasn't thrilled, but I wasn't worried either. I figured they'd just formalize what was already working. At first, that's exactly what they did. The HOA contracted my company for winter clearing. Same routes, same timing. Just contracts and invoices added. The first couple of winters under the HOA went smoothly. Roads were cleared early, buses ran. Nobody complained. Then the board changed. Melissa Harding was elected president, and the shift was immediate. She spoke like everything was a legal document. Every sentence included words like authority, liability, and compliance. At one meeting, a parent asked a simple question about plowing schedules, and Melissa smiled tightly and said, "That's not how decisions are made anymore. The HOA decides." That was the first time my stomach dropped. The real trouble started when she announced they were switching contractors. "We found a more cost-effective option," she said, tapping her folder. "Out of county. Fully licensed." I raised my hand and asked if they'd driven the roads, if they knew which corners iced first. If they understood how fast storms moved through the valley. Melissa didn't answer the questions. "We don't need local favoritism," she said flatly. "We need consistency." The new company proved how little consistency they had almost immediately. Their first storm, they showed up late. The second storm, they skipped half the side roads. The third storm, they didn't arrive until nearly mid-morning, after parents were already calling the school. That's when things started to go wrong. One morning, I watched a school bus attempt the main incline. Tires spun. The back end slid sideways. The driver backed down slowly, radio crackling, kids silent inside. A parent stood nearby with her phone pressed to her ear, saying she was going to be late to work again. People started stopping me when they saw my truck. "Can you just hit the school road real quick? Can you clear the hill before the buses come? Can you do what you used to do?" So I did, quietly, early, before anyone noticed. Kids got to school, buses stopped sliding. Emergency access stayed open, nobody complained, except Melissa. The first email came late one afternoon. "Unauthorized road modification," it said. "Interference with HOA operations," I replied calmly. I explained that I was only clearing critical access routes during heavy storms. I pointed out that the contractor wasn't showing up on time. She didn't respond. A few days later, another email arrived. This one mentioned fines, liability, violations. The language was colder, more legal. I tried again. I offered to coordinate schedules. I offered to plow only school routes. I even offered to step back completely if they could guarantee early clearing for buses and emergency vehicles. Her reply was one sentence: "Unauthorized activity will not be tolerated." That was when I understood something had changed. This wasn't about safety anymore. It wasn't even about snow. It was about control. As winter deepened, the storms grew heavier. Forecasts got uglier. Parents grew more anxious. Every time I checked the weather, that knot tightened in my chest, because I knew what was coming. And I knew the HOA wasn't ready. By the time the big storm showed up on the forecast, the one with heavy accumulation and high winds, the lines had already been drawn. Melissa had made her position clear. Either I stayed in my lane or I paid the price. What she didn't seem to understand was that mountains don't care about authority, and snow doesn't wait for permission. The storm didn't creep in. It announced itself days in advance, bold red warnings stacked across every forecast. Heavy accumulation, high winds, zero visibility at times. The kind of storm schools watch closely because one bad call can ripple through a whole morning. 3 days before it hit, I emailed the HOA again. I kept it professional. Short, I asked for written permission to clear the school route early, before sunrise, the way I had done for years. I attached the forecast. I mentioned the county advisory window. I even suggested coordinating with their contractor so there wouldn't be overlap. Melissa never replied. The night before the storm, the wind screamed through the trees hard enough to make the house groan. I barely slept. When I finally checked the clock, it was 4 a.m, still pitch dark. I stepped outside, and the snow swallowed my boots immediately. Flakes slammed sideways, stinging my face, piling faster than I'd ever seen. This wasn't something you waited on. This was something you stayed ahead of, or you lost control of it. By 5 a.m, the county issued a winter travel advisory. Normally, I'd already be halfway through the school route by then. Instead, I cleared my own driveway, hooked up the plow, and drove to the entrance of Pine Hollow. I parked there, engine running, blade raised, headlights cutting a narrow tunnel through the storm. And I waited. The wind howled. Snow rattled against the windshield like thrown gravel. Every minute I sat there, the road disappeared a little more. I watched fresh drifts form across the incline where buses always struggled first. At 6, my phone rang. "Do you know if the pharmacy truck made it up yet?" a mother asked, breathless. "My son's inhaler is on that delivery. I told her the truth. I said I was waiting on HOA authorization. There was a long pause. They turned around, she said quietly. They said they'll try again later. Later didn't help a kid who needed medication now. By 6:30, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Texts, missed calls, photos. One parent sent a picture of a car stuck sideways halfway up the hill, hazard lights blinking through the snow. Another sent a video of a school bus trying the turn near the mailboxes, tires spinning before the driver backed down slowly, kids sitting frozen inside, backpacks still on. At 7, the school district called. "You usually have that road clear by now," the transportation coordinator said. I could hear radios crackling in the background. "Our drivers are reporting unsafe conditions," I explained the situation. The ban, the emails, the threats. There was silence on the line. "You're telling me," she said slowly, "that the HOA told you not to plow a school route during an active advisory?" "Yes." She exhaled sharply. "We're delaying buses. If it's not cleared soon, we'll have to cancel the route entirely." While she was still talking, my email notification chimed. Melissa. The subject line was short, the message even shorter. "Do not touch HOA roads. Any action exposes the association to liability. You will be held personally responsible." I stared at the words while snow hammered the glass. My phone rang again, this time from County Dispatch. "There's an ambulance staged near the main road," the operator said. "If we get a call up there and the road's not passable, response time doubles." I felt my jaw tighten. I typed one last reply to Melissa, hand shaking despite the heat blasting in the cab. "There is an ambulance staged. A pharmacy delivery is blocked. School buses are delayed. I am parked and waiting for authorization." Her response came almost immediately. "This is not your concern." Cease activity. No acknowledgement, no hesitation. Just a legal wall slammed down. I sat there listening to the engine idle, listening to the wind roar, listening to my phone buzz again and again with messages I couldn't fix without crossing a line she'd drawn on purpose. That was the moment something broke. Up until then, I still believed this could be solved with explanation. With enough emails, with enough patience. Sitting there in the dark, watching the road vanish while a kid waited on medication and an ambulance waited at the edge of the valley, I finally understood the truth. This wasn't miscommunication. It wasn't bureaucracy. It was a decision. They were choosing control over safety, choosing liability language over real lives, choosing to let the clock run because they thought authority would protect them. I turned off the radio. The sudden quiet inside the cab felt heavy, because I knew then that the next move couldn't be another email. It couldn't be another request. If I stayed in that truck much longer, someone else was going to pay the price. And I wasn't willing to let that happen. I didn't send another email. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't ask for permission one more time like a fool. Instead, I turned the truck around and drove home. The snow was coming down so hard it felt like driving through a wall of white noise. Wind rattled the mirrors. Branches cracked somewhere in the trees. Every instinct in my body screamed to clear the road, but I forced myself to slow down. If I crossed the line now without proof, Melissa would bury me in legal language and call it justified. Inside my garage, the air was colder than the cab of my truck. I climbed a ladder and reached for the top shelf, fingers numb, knocking over old boxes until I felt it. A thick, bent folder covered in dust. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside were county plats, access maps, and one document I remembered very clearly. It was stamped, signed, and dated from a winter long before the HOA ever existed. Back then, an ambulance had nearly gotten stuck on this same hill, and a county inspector had walked the road with me afterward. He pointed at the map and said, "This is why we keep an easement." I laid the papers across the hood of my truck and read them slowly. The main access road into Pine Hollow was protected. School transportation and emergency vehicles had priority access at all times. Maintenance authority did not grant the right to restrict or block clearing during hazardous conditions. There was no gray area. My hands stopped shaking. I scanned the documents, attached the HOA emails, and made one call. David Mercer answered on the second ring. Before I could even finish explaining, he cut me off. "She told you to stop plowing a school route?" "During an advisory." "Yes." I heard the sound of papers moving on his end, keys tapping. His tone hardened with every second. "Send me everything," he said. "Right now. And do not touch that road yet." 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed. An email. County Confirmation of Access Authority. I opened it and felt the weight shift instantly. The county confirmed, in writing, that the HOA had no legal authority to block access to the road. Any delay in clearing during a winter advisory could be considered interference with emergency services. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the cab, everything went quiet. By mid-morning, the county engineer arrived. He stepped out of his truck, and the wind nearly knocked him sideways. Snow squealed under his boots as he walked the road, measuring drifts, snapping photos, shaking his head. Parents began gathering again, not angry this time, but focused. Phones came out. Videos rolled. Somewhere in the middle of it all, I noticed something missing. Melissa's emails had stopped. No warnings, no threats. No legal language, just silence. The county engineer made one call, spoke quietly, then turned to the group. "This road should have been cleared hours ago." The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. They cut through the storm cleaner than any plow blade. That sentence spread fast, through phones, through parents, through the school district. Within an hour, the narrative flipped. This was no longer a contractor dispute or an HOA policy issue. It was a documented safety violation. David called me back shortly after. "We're issuing a formal notice," he said. They crossed a line. I looked down the buried road one more time, snow still piling up, wind still screaming through the valley. For the first time all morning, I wasn't on the defensive. I wasn't reacting. I was waiting, with proof, with authority, and with the full weight of the county about to come down. The storm hadn't stopped, but control had already slipped out of her hands. I didn't drop the blade right away. Every muscle in my body wanted to clear that road the second the county email came through, but I forced myself to wait. This wasn't hesitation. It was discipline. If I moved too fast, Melissa would twist it into one last accusation. I needed this done clean, visible, and impossible to argue with. I forwarded the county confirmation to the school district first, then to emergency services. I attached timestamps, screenshots, and Melissa's emails. Every threat, every warning, every delay. No opinions. Just facts. The kind that don't change when someone tries to lawyer their way out. The school district called back almost immediately. "We're documenting everything," the coordinator said. "Drivers are standing by." Next came emergency services. "There's still an ambulance staged at the main road," dispatch told me. "If access opens, response time drops by half." That was the clock. I drove back to the neighborhood entrance just as the wind started to die down, leaving an eerie quiet behind it. Snow still fell, but softer now, the kind that hides danger instead of announcing it. The scene had changed. A county plow was already parked on the shoulder, lights flashing, engine rumbling low. Another truck rolled in behind it, chains clanking as it stopped. A sheriff's deputy stood near the entrance, boots planted wide, arms crossed, watching the road like it was evidence. Parents were there too, not yelling, not arguing, just recording. Phones up, cameras steady. I lowered the blade. The shriek of steel against packed snow tore through the quiet, sharp, and unmistakable. It echoed off the trees as I took the first pass, the plow biting down hard and throwing snow in heavy waves to either side. Behind me, the county trucks followed, widening the lane, carving clean edges where the road had been, nothing but white blur, An hour earlier. In less than 20 minutes, you could see pavement. That's when Melissa tried to re-enter the story. Her first email claimed credit. The HOA has coordinated with county officials to ensure timely access, it read. No mention of the ban, no mention of the threats. That version of events lasted about as long as it took for parents to start replying. Videos of the sheriff, photos of the county trucks, screenshots of her earlier emails dropped into the neighborhood group chat like bricks. Someone highlighted the county line that said the HOA had no authority to block access. Melissa pivoted. Her next message blamed me. She accused me of escalating the situation and creating confusion. She suggested that if I hadn't interfered, the HOA's contractor would have resolved the issue on schedule. That fell apart instantly when a parent posted timestamp photos showing the contractor arriving long after the road was already clear. The tone of the neighborhood shifted in real time. People who had been quiet all winter started speaking up. A teacher commented about white-knuckle drives. A parent shared a message from the pharmacy confirming the delayed delivery. Another mentioned how close the ambulance had been to being needed. The truth spread faster than any email could contain. By evening, the local news picked it up. A short segment aired about winter access issues in mountain communities. They didn't name Pine Hollow, but the footage told the story. Flashing county lights, a deputy at the entrance, parents filming silently in the snow. Melissa sent one last message that night. It was short, defensive, full of words like review and ongoing discussion. The authority was gone. What remained sounded brittle, almost scared. The road stayed clear. The pharmacy truck made it up before nightfall. The ambulance never had to roll. School buses ran the next morning without hesitation. And for the first time since the storm began, I wasn't reacting to threats or emails. I was standing in the middle of a road that should have been cleared all along, listening to the quiet scrape of chains fading into the distance, knowing something had finally changed. Not because someone gave permission, but because the truth showed up, and this time, it had witnesses. The emergency HOA meeting was called for 3 nights later, but by the time I arrived, it was obvious this wasn't going to feel like a meeting at all. Cars were jammed into every available space, headlights still on, as people climbed out and hurried inside. Through the doors, I could already hear voices, tight, angry, overlapping. The room was packed, not a single empty chair. Parents lined the walls. A few kids sat cross-legged on the floor with phones in their hands, quiet in a way that only happens when they know something serious is going on. The air felt heavy, like everyone was holding their breath at the same time. Melissa sat at the head of the table, back straight, a stack of papers perfectly aligned in front of her. She tapped the gavel once, sharp and loud. "This meeting will come to order," she said. "I want to remind everyone that this is a private HOA matter, and—" "No," a voice cut in. David Mercer stood up from the second row. The room went dead silent, not awkward quiet. Absolute quiet. You could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. "This is not a private matter," David said calmly, "and it hasn't been since the moment you blocked a school access road during a winter advisory." Melissa's jaw tightened. "With respect, you don't control this association." David didn't raise his voice. He walked to the front and placed a thick folder on the table. The sound it made, paper and cardboard hitting wood, cut through the room like a gunshot. "I control county access," he said. "And tonight, I'm here to explain the difference." Melissa leaned forward. "The HOA maintains that road. Our bylaws do not override county law," David said, flat and final. A parent in the back stood up. "My kid's medication didn't arrive that morning." Melissa snapped her head around. "That is not the HOA's responsibility." A murmur rippled through the room. David opened the folder. "Let's be very clear," he said, sliding a map onto the table. "This road is protected by a county easement for school transportation and emergency access." He tapped the highlighted line with his finger. Maintenance does not equal authority, and authority does not include obstruction. Melissa crossed her arms. You're exaggerating. Our contractor was scheduled to arrive. David looked at her. Do you have proof? She opened her mouth, closed it, reached for her papers, shuffled them loudly. Nothing. A teacher spoke up from the side. We delayed buses because drivers reported sliding. Kids were already on board. Another parent shouted, my car spun out trying to turn around. Melissa banged the gavel. Order. This is turning into a mob. David didn't react. He pulled out a printed email. I'd like to read something, he said. He didn't summarize it. He read it. You are not authorized to modify HOA road conditions. Any action will result in fines and personal liability. The room reacted all at once. Gasps. Angry whispers. Someone said, you sent that? David continued. Do not touch HOA roads. You will be held personally responsible. He finished and looked up. That email was sent during an active county advisory, he said. While school buses were delayed, while an ambulance was staged nearby. Melissa's voice was sharp now. Are you threatening the board? David turned slightly and nodded toward the sheriff's deputy standing against the wall. No, he said. I'm documenting you. The deputy shifted his weight. The sound of his boots against the floor was loud in the silence. One board member finally spoke, voice low. Why weren't we told about the easement? Another followed. Why were these emails sent without a board vote? Melissa didn't answer. A mother near the front stepped forward. You cared more about rules than kids. Melissa pointed at her. Sit down. David raised a hand. Enough. He closed the folder slowly. If an ambulance had been delayed, he said, this meeting would not be happening. There would already be an investigation. No one spoke. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. You could hear someone's phone vibrating unanswered on the floor. Melissa looked around the room, searching for support. No one met her eyes. This meeting is adjourned, she said abruptly, banging the gavel. No one moved. David gathered his papers. The county will be issuing a formal notice, he said. You'll receive it within 48 hours. People finally stood. Not in a rush. Slowly. Processing. Melissa stayed seated. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked trapped. And as I walked out into the cold night air, one thing was clear to everyone in that room. Whatever power she thought she had walked in with never made it back out. The consequences landed hard and fast. Less than 2 days after that meeting, a county vehicle pulled up to the HOA office and delivered a formal notice. Not a warning. Not a suggestion. A notice. It laid everything out in plain language. The easement, the storm timeline, the delayed access, and the emails that proved the obstruction wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding. The HOA had violated county access regulations tied to school transportation and emergency services. Fines were assessed immediately. They weren't symbolic. They were real numbers, real penalties, and they carried a second message underneath them. This will not happen again. Any future interference with that road would trigger harsher consequences and direct county intervention. The management company didn't wait. Their withdrawal email went out the same afternoon. Short, legal, carefully worded. They cited unacceptable legal exposure and terminated their contract effective immediately. No spin, no defense. They were gone. Behind closed doors, panic set in. Without a management company to buffer them, the board was suddenly exposed. County pressure, parent outrage, media attention. Everything that had been kept contained exploded outward. Emergency meetings were called. Conversations turned sharp, and every road led back to one name: Melissa. The emergency vote happened that night. No announcement, no public debate. The evidence was already everywhere. The county notice, the emails read aloud, the videos parents had recorded, the school district's documentation. There was nothing left to argue. Melissa was removed as HOA president by emergency vote, effective immediately. The message to residents went out later that evening. One paragraph. No explanation. No justification. Just a line stating that leadership had changed and interim measures were being implemented. The reaction came the next morning. I saw it at the bus stop, where kids stood on clean pavement instead of packed snow. Parents gathered quietly, hands wrapped around coffee cups, watching the road instead of their phones. When the bus came over the hill without sliding, without stopping, someone let out a breath they'd clearly been holding for days. No cheering, no applause. Just relief. The road stayed clear after that. County plows arrived before dawn during the next storm. No emails from the HOA. No warnings, no threats. The school route was treated like what it had always been, critical access. Emergency vehicles moved freely. The pharmacy truck made it up the hill without issue. Melissa disappeared. Her name vanished from the HOA website. She didn't send a farewell email. She didn't show up at meetings or mailbox clusters. One day she was there, issuing orders, and the next she was simply gone. Standing there one cold morning, listening to the low grind of plow blades and the soft hiss of tires on cleared pavement, I felt something finally settle. Not triumph. Accountability. The storm had done what no argument ever could. It stripped away titles, emails, and legal threats and exposed what really mattered. And once that happened, the power that had been used to block a road full of kids collapsed under its own weight. From that point on, the message was clear. Safety came first. And no one was going to forget it. After Melissa was removed, nothing about Pine Hollow changed overnight, but the tone did. The tension that had been sitting in the air all winter finally broke. People stopped whispering. Emails from the HOA stopped sounding like legal notices and started sounding like actual communication. An interim board was formed within days. Not the loudest voices, not the most rule-obsessed residents. Parents, longtime homeowners, a retired firefighter who'd lived on the hill long enough to remember when there wasn't even a paved road. People who understood that winter up here wasn't theoretical. The first thing they did was bring the county back to the table, not to argue, to listen. The easement was formally acknowledged in HOA records for the first time. School routes and emergency access were written into policy in plain language, not buried in bylaws. No approvals. No exceptions. If snow hit, those roads were cleared first. Every time. They called me next, not with a warning. Not with conditions, with a simple question. Will you handle the school route again? This time, everything was in writing, clear authority, clear timing, direct coordination with county services. No room for interpretation, no room for ego. I said yes. The rest of winter passed quietly, which, in Pine Hollow, is the best possible outcome. Storms came in hard, winds howled through the trees, and snow stacked up fast. But every morning before sunrise, the road was already clear. Buses rolled through without hesitation. Emergency vehicles never slowed at the entrance. The ambulance that had once waited at the county line never had to stage there again. The pharmacy truck stopped calling ahead to ask if it was safe to try. People noticed. Parents stopped hovering by windows in the mornings. Teachers stopped arriving late with white knuckles and shaking hands. Neighbors started talking again, really talking, at the bus stop and in driveways. The fear of getting on the HOA's radar disappeared almost as fast as the snowbanks melted. HOA meetings shrank. No gavel banging, no speeches about authority. Decisions were discussed instead of announced. The board did what it was supposed to do and nothing more. Melissa's name stopped coming up, not out of kindness, out of irrelevance. By the time spring finally pushed the last snow off the hills, Pine Hollow felt lighter. Kids rode bikes down the same road that had once been buried and dangerous. The crisis that had dominated the winter faded into something people talked about in past tense. One afternoon, as I finished plowing a late-season storm, a parent walked up beside my truck. "We don't worry anymore," she said. That matters. She was right. Winter came and went without another close call. And in a place like Pine Hollow, that kind of quiet isn't boring. It's everything. When I think back on that winter now, what stays with me isn't the snowstorms or the long nights in the truck. Snow is something you can measure. You can plan for it. You can clear it. What nearly caused real harm wasn't weather at all. It was pride. One person decided that control mattered more than safety, and for a moment, everyone else paid the price. I never wanted to fight my own neighborhood. I didn't set out to challenge an HOA or make a point. I just wanted kids to get to school without buses sliding backward, and I wanted emergency vehicles to be able to reach people if something went wrong. That was it. Somewhere along the way, that simple responsibility turned into a legal standoff I never asked for. What this taught me is that standing your ground doesn't always look dramatic. It isn't shouting or slamming doors. Sometimes it's sitting in a truck before sunrise, waiting while the clock ticks, trusting that the truth will matter more than threats if you document everything and do things the right way. Pine Hollow feels different now, calmer, safer. On winter mornings, when I hear the low scrape of a plow blade cutting through fresh snow before dawn, I'm reminded that doing the right thing doesn't need applause. It just needs consistency. The snow always melts. The storms always pass. But the choices people make when things get hard tend to last a lot longer. If you want to hear more true stories like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button to HOA Update. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from?